We'll go ahead and get started this morning. I guess it's still morning, 10 to 12. We wanted to get going here. We've got a fun program here for all of you, and we thank you all for being here. Welcome to the 2023 State of the City event. We are pleased to have so many instrumental people and businesses represented in the room. But if you haven't grabbed a bite to eat, go ahead and make your way over there. If you want seconds, I guess you can do that as well. So as you finish up your lunch, we would like to call the 2023 Hastings Economic Development Corporation annual meeting to order. As many of you know, I am the current Hastings Economic Development Corporation Board President, and this year has been full of growth. In 2023, alongside the Hastings Area Chamber of Commerce, we hired a joint executive director. We believe this partnership is strong, and as I am representing the HEDC executive team, we want to thank our good friends with the Chamber executive team for the extra effort put forth to bring us together in partnership and under common leadership and direction. After an extensive national search, in May of this year, Shannon Landauer was hired as the executive director. She began her role here in Hastings on August 1st, and in her short time, she is already striving forward, encouraging growth, organization, and efficient processes for both entities. Personally, from day one, I have been impressed with her efforts to actively be involved in face-to-face meetings with business owners, learning what makes Hastings and Adams County special, and figuring out solutions to specific issues these businesses may face. Thank you, Shannon. I look forward to continuing to work together. During this search in April and May, the board determined that we needed some help through the transition time frame. We turned to an old friend and colleague for this. Many of you know Bob Wilson, with his years as an active member of the Hastings Economic Development Corporation, serving on the executive board and as president of our corporation. Thank you, Bob, for helping us through this interim role. We would not have stayed on track without you. Bob, would you stand and be recognized? Beyond personnel, we have officially closed on all 76 housing and 14 duplex lots in the North Park Commons. If you drive through, you will see houses that are going up quickly. And with our 2-year build timeline, we should see the remainder of these lots built out by this time next year. We received another round of rural workforce housing funds and have plans for exciting projects to support with those funds as well. We have had a hand in many projects, including downtown revitalization, the theater district project at the site of the old mall, business expansions, and more. We worked with local educators, businesses on career fairs, industry tours, pathway programs, and internship programs. Special thank you to Madison Jaggles, the HEDC Community Development Director, for developing, installing, and leading these programs in our area middle and high schools and at Hastings College and Central Community College, and helping to develop and retain our young people in the area. As we move forward to 2024, we will continue our housing, business, and workforce efforts, continue to strengthen our relationships with our city and state and legislative partners, all while introducing fresh marketing efforts to put Hastings on the map for new projects and talented people. Before we wrap up today's annual meeting, we do have an outgoing board member to recognize. And I don't think Mark could be with us today, but we would like to thank Mark Hemge for serving on our board from 2021 through 2023. Thank you, Mark. With that, I would like to entertain a motion to adopt Scott Barwick for that seat on our Hastings Economic Corporation Board of Directors for the 2024 through 2027 term. Do I have a motion? Motion by George.
Second.
Seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion passes. Thank you, and welcome Scott Barwick to the board. Scott, will you please stand? And finally, to wrap up our annual meeting, while I will still continue to serve out my 2023 term, I want to thank everyone for supporting my time as Hastings Economic Development Corporation president this year. I am extremely optimistic and excited to see the opportunities and growth potential for both HEDC and our chamber partner. Personally, I will continue to be active on the HEDC executive board and support our new leadership both here and at the city level. And I ask that each of you also consider taking a more active part in moving Hastings forward. Vocally support important community issues. Share an encouraging word to our newest leaders in our community. And finally, be a positive advocate for our elected officials and city staff. Once my term rounds out in 2023, I will be passing the gavel to Terry Anstein in 2024. Terry has served on this presidency once before, and I believe you all will be in very good hands. Terry, would you please come forward?
First of all, I got to thank Scott for his sound leadership this past year. It was a year of a lot of activity and change, obviously. He helped guide HEDC during our gap in directors, which I know firsthand meant learning a lot about day-to-day operating details, and he was instrumental in securing our new director. I feel very fortunate to follow the groundwork that Scott laid this past year. It was gratifying to work alongside with him. We learned a lot about things that we did not anticipate learning about. Real estate development is one of them. I'm excited to work with Shannon and Madison and the rest of our executive team. There's really great people sharing a common theme of what we can do to make Hastings better. I have great confidence that Shannon will keep us focused, particularly me, and be prepared for whatever is ahead of us. And echoing what Scott just said, it's our hope that we can get our community more unified towards a better future for Hastings. We've obviously had some fractures here and there, but I think we can all get together and support things that make sense. I want to thank Scott for his exceptional efforts. Without his commitment and passion, we would not be in the position we're in today. So, with that, I'm going to present you with this ceremonial gavel to recognize your productive year as president of HEDC. It's a wonderful gavel. Permanently affixed. He cannot play with it. Thank you, Scott.
Thanks, Terry. So before we move into today's program, is there a motion to adjourn the annual meeting? Motion to adjourn, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Terry. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The annual meeting has been adjourned. Now, we would like to invite past HEDC Executive Director from 1979 through 2011 to share some history of our corporation in celebration of our 50th year anniversary. Dee Hostler, would you please come forward?
Good morning. Nice to be with you. Just before I came in to the meeting, I was trying to remember a gentleman's name that was the manager of the Chamber of Commerce back in 1973 when HEDC was formed. At that point in time, I asked Mickey Schaefer, and she said, "Dee, I'm not that old." He was not born yet at that point in time. Hastings Economic Development Corporation was started back in 1973, and I don't want to go off my script or I'll mess it all up. So I'm gonna start out, but over the years you have really seen the transformation of economic development in the United States. In the formative years, our country, the electric companies provided the economic development efforts for our nation. Electricity was a critical component of economic development. The availability of reliable and affordable power supply is essential to attracting new business and new industry, and the retention and support of industrial operations, and improving the overall quality of life for our citizens. In 1967, the state of Nebraska legislature created the Nebraska Department of Economic Development to specifically attract growth and investment to our state. Hastings and Fremont, I believe, were the first communities to actually develop economic development corporations. 50 years ago, Hastings Economic Development Corporation was officially incorporated on September 5th, 1973 by Hastings businessmen and men and women just as you are, professional people, the City of Hastings, the County of Adams, the Hastings Housing Authority, Hastings Chamber of Commerce, and Hastings JCs, with the overall goal of stimulating growth and economic development for the City of Hastings, Adams County, and the surrounding territory. HEDC's priorities were to retain and assist our existing businesses and industries for their future growth, the creation of new jobs, primary jobs, wealth-creating jobs, which were very high on the list, the attraction of new business and industry clients to invest in our area, and to provide assistance to entrepreneurs with new business startups. Our mission statement at Hastings Economic Development Corporation was to attain the necessary manpower to be effective, to raise sufficient funds to invest in land and infrastructure necessary for our growth, to coordinate major agencies within the area to place everyone on the same page, and to improve community attitude, and last, to satisfy the community desire for growth in no half measures. Hastings was the first community to develop an industrial park. We were also the first community to utilize industrial revenue bonds to develop Industrial Park West. Since then, we've been able to add Industrial Park North. We've further developed the Naval Ammunition Depot, and then individual sites have been developed. Along with the private sector, Hastings Economic Development Corporation was the first community to actually build speculative buildings. I was involved in that, along with Ed Lautzenheiser and Don Anderson and Virgil Ihusen in the private sector. We built 8 spec buildings, about 850,000 square feet of buildings, which is pretty unusual. In most states, it's very dangerous and has been, even for us. One building lasted for, I think it was 18 years before it was moved on. And thank goodness for Dennis Bauer, who took 2 of those buildings and developed those, one in Industrial Park West and one of those in Industrial Park North. In the first 50 years, many hundreds and maybe thousands of jobs have been created. Many millions and possibly now $1 billion with the new investment out by the new energy center have been invested in already. Economic development is very competitive, as you all know, and very expensive. Hastings' successes would not have been available or not have been possible without the full commitment from everyone involved. It was my honor and my privilege to serve Hastings, Adams County, the Hastings Boards of Directors for Hastings Economic Development Corporation as their executive director from June 5th, 1979 to December 31, 2011. It was my privilege also to attract Dave Rippey to succeed me, and our board approved of that. Thank you, David. Since I've retired, Hastings Economic Development has taken on many activities and responsibilities that you've heard from and you'll read in your information at your desk, at your table. I'd like to thank you for inviting me to, and my family, to be a part of this wonderful community, and for allowing me to participate in Hastings Economic Development Corporation efforts for 44 of its first 50 years. Again, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dee. That's a wealth of knowledge, and we do appreciate your service to our community. I now invite Sean Metcalf, the Hastings City Administrator, to come forward for a few words.
Well, thank you. It's such a humbling opportunity to be with this group of people, and economic development is something that I have always loved. I actually grew up in a home of an entrepreneur. He's owned his own business for 40 years, and so when I am helping and assisting with economic development, I think of my dad. You know, how can I create a good experience for developers that are coming into the city? And what I want to talk about today is the partnership with HEDC. And I'll start off with this quote. The purpose of local government is to enable individuals to join together in recognizing and solving community partners. The key there is join together. You know, as we join together with our various groups in local government, that's how we're successful. We can't do it alone. The city's successful with the help of HEDC. HEDC is successful with the help of the city. We work together collaboratively. And so that's what I want to talk about, is kind of the meaning and purpose of what I'm trying to focus on as being a good community partner and partner to HEDC. So I want to talk about some of the things that we've already done together, some of the things that we are currently working on, and some of the things that we can look forward to. So with that, some of the things that we've already implemented together is Shannon and I have weekly collaboration meetings where we can just talk about things that are coming up, and that's such an important communication. Shannon's taken me on some industry visits, which has been great, just getting to know our current business owners and connecting with them and being there for them. We have a monthly department head collaboration meeting with HEDC. So we have individuals from the fire department, development services, utilities, engineering. We all come together and say, hey, here's some individuals or businesses that are coming. Let's discuss what we can do to help them have a good experience when they come here. So that's been really important. And we have seen success with that already with incoming businesses. We've had a couple where if we hadn't had that early kind of intervention, I think that that developer that I have in my mind would have had a much more frustrating experience. And so that's what we want to be for Hastings Economic Development Corporation, is to provide as high of a quality of experience as we possibly can. We've also, the city is working on helping whenever a business is interested in coming to the city, helping with all of that information so that we can put kind of a bid package out there of like, these are the reasons why you'd want to come to Hastings. Here's all of our utilities. Here's all the information that they need from the city's perspective to be able to help them make a decision to come here. Last week or recently, we had the annual manufacturing week. We had many city employees that participated in that, and we're excited to participate in more things throughout the year. I'm sure there will be lots more to come. Recently, we hired a new development services director, which is Chad Bunger. Chad, are you here today? Ah, there he is. He'll raise his hand there. Chad is doing such a good job. If you haven't met him already, I'd encourage you to go say hi. He's such a even-keeled, such a friendly person, such a knowledgeable and experienced in his trade. So he's been a huge addition to the city in creating that quality experience for businesses coming in. I know Chad is working on a lot of different things to create that positive experience for businesses that are coming here. Also, I know one thing that Chad has been recently working on is looking at our fees and different structures, and also our codes, and how can we make our codes more friendly for developers and those sorts of things. Another addition that's helped for developers is that we just added a new fire inspector, and currently our fire marshal hasn't been able to keep up with the amount of need that we have, and so adding that person will create a better experience for businesses coming in. So that's been a good addition. I know the fire department is working on things to assist developers, and I wrote down a few. Each new developer will receive a cover letter, and these are the things you need to be prepared for and think about as you're getting started with the fire department and getting your inspections done. So that will be first thing that they receive. That creates a good experience. They plan to do weekly check-ins with all the developers, and that's awesome, I think, to be able to keep that connection and continue to help them. And oftentimes when you're working with so many different people, it's easy for things to just fall through the cracks, and so that ongoing tracking will be great. They're implementing a new system. It's IROL system, so they can vendors can electronically report their inspections, and we can communicate with businesses throughout this through that program. So that's something coming up. We're changing some of our verbiage that we use when we're talking to developers. An example is, instead of you're failing at an inspection, we're using you're non-compliant right now. Let's use better words. It's an easy win. So it's all those things. It's all these things. All the little things make a big difference. And so we're looking at it all. And the same thing, just going back to development services, they're looking in their area. They're looking at all these little different things and how they can make improvements. Here's another one that's caused some friction, is that sometimes people see our fire marshal and they're not sure if it's the state's fire marshal or if it's ours. That's a frequently confused thing, and so we're actually changing our title to be a risk reduction officer, so that there's not that confusion. An easy win, I think. Another thing that we just barely got, and they just sent this to us, is we did a ICMA, International City Managers Association TV. They did a 5-minute video on our community, and we focused on the quality of life of Hastings, which is great here. And the second thing was economic development, is why, this is a great place to live, work, and play. And so HEDC is welcome to use that video if you find that helpful. We're happy to give that to you. Some things that you can look forward to, and this is another development services item that's coming on an upcoming work session. So oftentimes we have lack of, say, plumbers and different tradespersons to get projects done. I know it's just getting harder and harder to get those trades. So plumbing, gas, mechanical, utility installers. And so one thing that we would like to bring is that anytime, let's say someone goes to Grand Island and they get their permit to be able to do work there, when they do that, they're automatically qualified to do that in Hastings. Why reinvent the wheel? Why don't we work together? And so that's props to them for putting that out there and trying to move that forward. I think that's going to be awesome. Chapter 34 and 38 of our codes, is zoning and subdivisions, that Chad is heading up, is making changes to those to create better, again, it's all about that quality experience, making those sometimes just easy changes to make that a better experience. Another thing that some of you will actually receive today is the annual community survey that we put out. There are some questions in there that are directly related to economic development, and I wrote down a few of them here. So we're asking residents kind of their perception of the city, overall quality of new development. What do residents think about that with us? What do they think about development across the city? What about affordable housing and development across the city? There's a question about that says, what makes Hastings unique? I think there is potentially an opportunity to enhance branding in the city, and that will be insightful to hear from residents on that. There's some quality of living questions. How is Hastings as a place to shop, visit, dining, entertainment, place to work? And so we're going to gather all of this information, and it can be a tool to help us as we move forward. There's some questions here on development specifically. Do we have enough places to work, office development, retail, restaurants, services, technology, other industry, apartments, townhomes, on and on. So you kind of get the point there. And then we've got some upcoming projects related to economic development. One thing I saw when I first came to the city, I went to City Hall, and I honestly was a little bit embarrassed. So the council has decided to renovate City Hall, and I think when developers come in, that's going to create when they see City Hall, that reflects on everything else that we do. So that's going to be a great change. As mentioned, Theater District is an awesome project. There's going to be some discussion here pretty soon on 12th Street improvements, which I know a lot of people will appreciate, which helps economic development and people wanting to go into that area. There's also the Highway 6 roundabout project, and Quiet Crossings it's coming. I know some of you don't believe it. Some of the work is already done. So it's gonna get done, and it will be awesome when we get that in place. And then another big one is the strategic plan for the city that we're working on right now. We have a committee that's been put together to host different focus groups, and they've decided on 20 different groups that they want to engage with and say, hey, what do we want the city to look like now and into the future? And they're doing an awesome job, and that's going to inform us on things that we can work on and be better at. Also, when we get the results, I didn't mention this about the survey, everyone in this room will have access to that survey. If you want to play around with it, you can. You can say, hey, let's look at this demographic of ages 18 to 24, and then you can see how they answered questions related to the city. So that'll be a great tool. And then I want to tell you, sometimes what I've heard in Hastings is that there's been some comments of like, are we really growing? I mean, the population, I will give you that's been pretty steady, is that the right word? It hasn't grown a lot, but we are growing in population a little bit at a time. But what I found interesting in talking to development services, they pulled these numbers for me, is that just in the past few years, we've had $100 million in new valuation in the city. How many people realize that? That's pretty cool. And then, so a third of that $100 million comes from housing, and 2/3 of that is commercial growth. So sometimes we see, okay, this business left, but the reality is that we're doing really well in commercial growth. Just with finishing up the project, the biodiesel plant, that's going to be $400 million in new valuation. Is just huge for our community. And I would anticipate we're going to have more of this, increase in commercial valuation, which is good for everyone. So with that, I just want to end with the same quote that I started with. I think that the purpose of local government is to enable individuals to join together in recognizing and solving community problems. And I think as we continue to work on all of these different things and we work together, we can do some great things for Hastings. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. I don't think, listening to Sean, I don't think you would know, if you didn't know already, that he's relatively new to town. He's just kind of finishing up his first year here in Hastings, but his energy, his ability to listen, and his positive attitude, I think, just comes out every time I hear him talk and talk to him. So I do appreciate what you're doing for our town, Sean. I appreciate it. Now, I would like to invite Shannon Landauer, the Hastings Economic Development Corporation and Hastings Area Chamber of Commerce Executive Director, to come forward.
Good afternoon. I wanted to start by recognizing our team at the Hastings Economic Development Corporation and Hastings Chamber of Commerce. I want to just take a minute and thank them for their efforts in putting together our event today. Madison Jaggles, our Community Development Coordinator. Mickey Schaefer, Assistant Director. Nicole Felber is our Programs Director. Jamie Tomlin is our Membership and Communications Director. And Braden Hicks is the newest member of the team as our Economic Development Intern. So if you guys would like to stand and be recognized, that'd be great. This team has done a great job of putting together everything I've asked of them and pivoting as we need to pivot and acting with urgency when we need to, and I just can't thank them enough for their work. I also want to recognize Bob. I think if not for Bob being in the office and keeping things together and laughing at me and bringing treats too, it really means a lot. So Bob, thanks for everything that you have done. I also think it's important to recognize here the elected officials that we do have in the room. As we've heard today, collaboration with elected officials at every level is really critical to what we want to do in Hastings for economic development. So we have got Steve Halloran, our senator from District 33, Dave Merman, senator from District 38, Chuck Newman is with our County Board of Supervisors, Jennifer Beam with Hastings City Council Ward 1, and Sean Hartman, Hastings City Council Ward 4. Thanks to all of you for joining us and being a part of our day and hearing about the efforts that are going into Hastings. Additionally, Scott talked a little bit about me, but I want to talk about him. Scott's been an outstanding asset to HEDC in the time he served as president and maintained economic development efforts while completing the organizational transition. To explain his commitment even further, he's my board president. He's a fellow member at St. Cecilia. He's my neighbor, my lender, a fellow softball parent, and then he still wanted to hang out with my husband and I on a Saturday night. So I think that says a whole lot. And Terry as well, lots of hours come into our office. Terry's been teaching me patience. He's been teaching me about projects. Most importantly, Terry is teaching me to look both ways at conversations and when crossing streets in our neighborhood because Terry's always in a hurry. So thanks to both of you. Dee and Dave, I just can't say enough about these individuals and the groundwork that they have laid with economic development in Hastings. Not only in their time as executive directors, but their legacy for being passionate about this community and the health of our community and vitality extends so far beyond their days on the HEDC payroll. They're continuing to advocate on a regular basis in their actions, not just their words. And truly you are two of the best coaches and advocates we could ask for economic development in Hastings. So I want to thank all of these individuals at HEDC, our elected officials. Again, let's take a moment to say thank you. I think the thank you is really an appropriate way to start this conversation today because I do have a lot to be thankful for around this opportunity to step in and lead a new collaboration in a community in Nebraska I was very familiar with as a child. We have a bright future ahead, and it means a lot to see this many faces in the room. That means that your investment of time and just this event alone is showing your commitment to collaboration and to community growth and vision for Hastings. There are some individuals in this room too that chose to take the more challenging path in the last year and a half to put this partnership together, and that was an undertaking in and of itself, aside from all of the great work that's happening. So to briefly introduce myself to those of you I don't know, I'm Shannon Landauer, your Executive Director of HEDC and the Chamber of Commerce. My work in economic development began in 2005 at Boone County Development Agency in Albion. My very first week was when we mobilized construction for a Valero ethanol plant. So we learned really, really quickly. To put into perspective the history of this entity, that organization in Boone County began in 2001, and Dee had already been busting lots of chops by that time. Dee had had a lot of success, so it just shows how important it is to have long-term development. I have taken some time in Iowa serving a 4-county economic development region, but also I spent 8 years leading a partnership just like this one as the executive director of 2 entities with 2 boards, 2 budgets, 2 missions, but collaborative work with the same goal of moving the community forward. So I felt like when you get the tap from Dave Rippey and the call to say, consider coming home, it was something I felt very capable of doing and an opportunity that was pretty exciting. The work that I've done has included several sectors, from value-added agriculture, advanced manufacturing, renewable energy, food processing, insurance and data, and a lot of community development projects. That ranges across housing and childcare and many, many other efforts. But through the decades since the beginning of HDC, these past leaders placed lots of groundwork in place emphasizing industrial development, commercial and community development, and many other of the facets that a strong economic development program has to have in place, really leading us to a place where we can work holistically and look at this community where we're at and where we want to be. The downtown redevelopment, we see business and residential investments that are bringing transformation and neighborhood projects bringing to life past spaces that really needed a little bit of lifting. Nothing that we are going to do today or for any day forward is going to see immediate result in gratification. Economic development is about planting seeds to bring investment and bring future. And I really look at it as, I want this to be a community where my kids will come home to, and I certainly don't want to plant seeds that I don't want to be responsible for if I last 30 plus years like Dee did. On the table, you get to see a lot of the projects that have been exciting for us. In 23, some of the direction where we're headed with 24. We've talked a little bit about those through the day. But I think that we also need to recognize those collaborations because we can't put a dollar figure on projects like HAMA and MPAT and the economic development and entrepreneurship efforts that are happening out there. But the time invested is bringing it back tenfold. And so all of those efforts that you're a part of are all things, too, that we need to be very aware of and continue moving forward. HEDC will be working more formally with the business retention and expansion program so that we can more closely understand the goals of our industries, the successes that they've seen, and the community needs that we can help to bring to life for them to meet their goals. We like to lead this work with data and be very data focused and intentional about the work that we're doing. We don't just want to think we know about Hastings, we want to know we know. And that's everything from retail data to industry sectors that we want to focus on to even those housing needs assessments. I think we'd all sit here and agree we have housing challenges. The country has housing challenges, but we need to know what we need to prioritize first. And so the data-driven approach and new tools that you'll see out of the Chamber and HEDC are really going to help lead that effort for us. One of the most exciting things to me with this effort too is the storytelling. While when we're in our own room, in our own bubble, we really sit and look at the space and we might start to critique ourselves. But we have to look outside our fishbowl here in Hastings and really look at our peer communities, look outside of Nebraska for examples of efforts that we need to consider for our community, but also to take time and celebrate successes. You know, every time you're in a coffee shop or in a public setting, you have the ability to ask people, what brought them here? If you're not from here, what is it? What do you love? And we need to tell that story outside of our borders in Nebraska. We know that people in metros, for the first time in decades, are getting out. They're looking for rural communities just like ours. But if we're not telling the story, they're not going to find us. And to me, that's the magic, really celebrating what we have and thinking of programming that can help take that forward. We want to be the example in the Midwest. We want people asking us, how do you even do that? So with continued strength of partnership and economic development, we think we're going to continue all these initiatives that we've talked about. Not just think, we know we will. We may approach things a little differently, but we know we have a groundwork for a very strong, holistic partnership at the Chamber of Economic Development. And while these efforts have changed in pace and scope and approach, and that was really sped up through the pandemic, Hastings has already identified opportunities to build momentum across these entities. We've created a program of work that's based on skills that are needed to lead our community by example. I'm honored to have the opportunity to lead this partnership of the Chamber and Economic Development. And as we really look at how the economy has changed for our businesses, we want to make sure that when we hear the call, we're there to answer as a staff of professionals, but also as people that really believe in and love our community in the state of Nebraska. So today we get to celebrate the success of the community in recent years, the strength and resiliency of Hastings, the persistence of our community leaders, and all those that are waiting to see what potential is still out there in front of us. This one team working for us at the Chamber and HEDC is evaluating programs and services. We are really looking to continue to follow examples that we get from Director Balitz in Nebraska Department of Economic Development. We don't want to go it alone, nor do we have to, but we want to work in lockstep as a very important community in the state of Nebraska when he's telling our story globally. In the short time that I've been here, as we've been out meeting with businesses, I've had the opportunity to learn about the products that we're making and where they're going and the different locations that we have. And we want to make sure that every one of those business leaders is also hearing that call to action and advocating for Hastings. When they're out globally and in Asia and in South America and they're looking at different things that we can do here, why not Hastings? We only limit ourselves with our mindset. We know the why nots, we know it's housing, and we know it's workforce, but we also know what we are capable of. So as we continue to move forward with Chamber and HEDC, and to boards and to budgets and to missions with one amazing team, we look to continue our work with the city partnership and relationship. I see Randy with the CRA. He's lovingly referred to as the Godfather in the building for me. There's just been so many people investing so much that in closing, I want to emphasize that collaboration is evidence of growth and exponential opportunity, while these individualized efforts happening go at a slower pace and they can lead us to stagnation. So I want to applaud the efforts of the past and the vision for partnership of those that have helped to bring Hastings forward with this HEDC and Chamber collaboration. It's not an effort of individuals, but it's a great group of passionate leaders providing evidence of this desire to grow, and it's a palpable feeling in our community, and in rooms like this, you just know there's energy. Engaging in the development process will continue to bring Hastings forward for years to come and generations to come. So again, thank you for joining us and being a part of the forward momentum for Hastings.
Thank you, Shannon. If you don't already realize it, I think there will be a time in the coming days that you will be very thankful and know that you're blessed to have Shannon as a neighbor and as the director of our chamber and our Hastings Economic Development Corporation. She's going to make a difference here. I now invite K.C. Balitz, the Nebraska Department of Economic Development Director, to come forward for a few words.
Thank you, Scott, and thanks to all of you for being in this room. And let me just say, I really mean that. I've been in chamber and economic development work for more than 2 decades, and what we know full well is that the success of the staff always goes back to the engagement, the participation, the leadership that's provided by volunteers and community investors and all of that. So I really am personally and professionally appreciative that all of you showed up today to celebrate Hastings. That's good stuff. So thank you for doing that. And thank you for the invitation to spend just a couple minutes with you today. It is great to be able to come celebrate with all of you, and so let me just use my opportunity as an outside observer to encourage all of you to not take for granted all of the good work that you're doing, because we're Nebraskans who put our heads down and go to work, and we accomplish the whatever the thing is, and we go do the next thing. So let me just encourage you to stop and really appreciate all that has been accomplished, all that is being accomplished in Hastings. You continue to see growth in sales tax receipts. You've had significant projects like the Hartwell renewables. You've done all of the cool stuff in housing. I mean, it was 15, 18 years ago. I came here twice with a group from Columbus to learn from, I didn't know it was the Godfather, but that's good to know, to learn from Randy about what was being done here. I mean, the state of the city, I guess in keeping with today's event, is strong in Hastings. And certainly also congratulations on 50 years. Indeed, congratulations for the role that you have played in that. So for me, I'll give you a little bit of a state of the state, and we'll talk about what we see as the current and future of economic development. And I've been there for 3 months, and so obviously I'm still learning an awful lot of the things that many of you in the room already know. But through that period of time, I think there's 3 general buckets. Actually, even before that period of time, in talking through this with Governor Pillen, there's probably 3 buckets that we're focused on at DED for the time being. And the first is really internal and really creating a great culture and operational excellence within DED. They still, as you all would certainly understand, the entire team still refers to the golden Rippy years with great fondness. But since then, there has been a whole lot of transition in that agency, and traditionally you would have looked at maybe 50, 60, 70,000 a year of annual budget and annual appropriation. This year we are just a whisker short of $1 billion that has to go through DED. And what that means internally is workload. That's what that means, because you have to vet the projects and stand up the programs and do all those things. So just all of that has increased. It has certainly given us an opportunity to have impact, and that's awesome. But it has created a lot of transition within that agency. At the end of the fiscal year last year, we were about 20% short in terms of filling the available spots at DED, so we experienced the same thing the rest of the state does. I'm pleased to say now we're about 10% short, so there's real progress being made. But nonetheless, just been a lot of that. Transition is the right word, and we're still working through that, and that continues to be a major priority. So then, talking about the work, I don't think there's any question that people attraction is job one. We all know we're tens of thousands of people short to fill available jobs in Nebraska. In that environment, that is economic development. Workforce development, economic development, community development, all really one thing. And so that's certainly our priority. And I want to start this with saying, there's certainly positives out there as well. And Shannon alluded to some of that in her comments a minute ago. Nebraskans do work hard. We have a much higher labor participation rate than the vast majority of the country. I think we're number 3 currently in terms of the percentage of Nebraskans who are at work. We've got more people, think about this, we have more people working in construction today than at any time in our state's history. Doesn't feel like it when we're talking about all the housing we need to build, but it's true. Construction and hospitality, we have more Nebraskans working today in those industries than ever. We have more people in manufacturing today than we've had for the last 20 plus years. So there are good things happening, just not fast enough and not enough. And as we look to the future, I will also suggest that there are real reasons to be optimistic about where we're headed. First of all, and I was surprised by this, I would guess some of you will be as well, but Nebraska is a relatively, really young state. We have the 3rd highest percentage of people under the age of 18 of any state in the Union. We have the 6th highest birth rate of any state in the Union. We are a young state and getting younger, actually, because of those statistics. So that's going to, long term, doesn't help tomorrow, but long term, clearly, those are really positive signs. And that is related to what I have said many times already in this role, is what I believe to be an unprecedented window of opportunity for Nebraska. And part of it is the numbers I just shared. Part of it is also the fact that we have and will have going forward what I would believe to be the most receptive audience to a message of moving to Nebraska that we've enjoyed in a very long time, and particularly in what we would describe as, say, greater Nebraska. And the reason is probably twofold. And first and foremost is the centennial generation. So the kids who were born just before and after the turn of the century. They want very different things than their predecessors wanted. They value different things. So at Nebraska Community Foundation, the last 4.5 years when I worked there, we conducted surveys of students all across the state, in small towns primarily, Norfolk, Columbus, and then smaller. And without exception, in every case, when we asked those Nebraska high school students, what are you looking for when you're going to decide where you're going to live as an adult? The answers are the same. And it is not mountains or oceans or bars or nightlife. It's not even jobs, because they're not worried about that. They know they can find a job anywhere, right? What they want, what will determine where they live, in every case, safety, good schools, family. That's what they want. What do we have in rural Nebraska? Safety, good schools, family. For the first time in any of our lifetimes, and I was alive in 1973, we have what they want. We have never been able to say that about the next generation. We can say that today. And that is a much easier proposition than what many of us who worked in chambers and economic development for a long time have talked about. And I remember those conversations. How do we reinvent ourselves to be something we're not so that we're attractive to the next generation? That's a much harder proposition than telling the story of what we already are. And that's the opportunity that is in front of us in Nebraska. Those things are driving then their desire to live in small towns, and Shannon alluded to that. When we asked those Nebraska students, about 2/3 want to live in a town no larger, I think it was Grand Island was actually the example, so, micropolitan to small metro. That's as big as they want to go. And a strong percentage of them want to stay in the small town where they live now. Only 4% want to go anywhere bigger than Omaha. So 96% of our current students that we've surveyed are happy living in a community the size that they can find in Nebraska. And most of them want to live in that town in Nebraska. It is a very different story than we would have gotten from the class of '86 at Columbus High. When we were going to go somewhere else, we were going to go experience those things. And some of these kids are too, and that's awesome. They should go get those experiences, but they want to come home. They want to live here. We have a responsibility to tell those students that they can in fact do that and find the careers and business opportunities that they want, because that's the call to action out of that survey. The only reason to any statistical significance that those students say they don't see themselves in a small Nebraska town is they don't think they can find the job or business opportunity they want. Everybody in this room knows that's not true for most of them, right? We know they can find the career they want in Hastings. Yeah, oceanographer might be a tough sell, but beyond that, you have careers, you have business opportunities in Hastings, and we have a responsibility to tell them through internships, mentoring, all kinds of other opportunities to connect with those students. So at DED, that's again certainly job one, and so obviously you all know we've upped significantly through an investment by the legislature and the governor, upped our investment in Intern Nebraska to a $20 million program matching up students with businesses to address that question and concern that I just raised. We're doing career opportunity scholarships through the community colleges, including Central here in Hastings. We're up on our game in that way, and that will just do nothing but go forward. We're having some really interesting conversations about what we do as a state, not just state government, but as a state, to go tell that story to folks outside of our borders, both those who have been in Nebraska and want to move back, and those who frankly don't know Nebraska exists, and they should. I believe that is really primarily a marketing challenge, and again, a marketing challenge much easier to take on than reinventing your community to be something that you're not. So that's a significant part of it. Obviously, the other part of it is the kind of the community development bucket, and that matters too. If we're going to attract these people here, they need somewhere to live. They need a place that's going to have that great school, all those things. And so community development becomes a core part of economic development as well. You all, and you've heard it already today, you all have been doing that work together here in Hastings, building housing, doing that awesome stuff in downtown with housing, expanding your YMCA, all those things you're already doing. You're preparing well for that opportunity that's in front of you. So community development becomes key as well. And then I think it's closely related to this also. The third big bucket at DED going forward, I think, is sort of a growing your own strategy. So that means two big things. One is kind of entrepreneurship, innovation, that whole space. We have to grow more of our own business leaders in the state, and it's going to be a focus, certainly a focus of the governor, it's a focus of mine. We just launched 2 weeks ago now the governor's new entrepreneurship pitch contest. It's starting this year with a student approach, but it'll be we plan to expand that to both students and adult entrepreneurs going forward. We want to really raise the profile of entrepreneurship as something that should be pursued. And we're spending a lot of time and having a lot of conversations about how we really build Nebraska's entrepreneurial ecosystem into a much more functional system than it is today. We got lots of resources, programs, projects, initiatives within that space, but they aren't well connected, and they aren't well connected to the entrepreneurs. And so we're going to hopefully be a convener and a connector in that space as well, because we do have some cool stuff going on Innovation Campus and lots of places around the state within that. You've had that happen here as well, obviously. Again, you've had very successful entrepreneurs recently in Hastings. So the three big buckets, again, that we're interested in these days, I think is first that internal, just operational excellence piece. People attraction is job one, and then growing our own, both through entrepreneurship and innovation, and I would say, too, investing in Nebraska companies that want to grow. And that leads me to kind of the last thing, which is I like to take almost every opportunity I can just to spread the gospel to folks who are in your seats, that this is just not your grandpa's economic development anymore. Things have changed so dramatically, and Dee referenced it, right? I mean, it is night and day different. There was a time 20, 30 years ago, it was very simple. Cheap power, cheap land, cheap workforce, that was it. All you had to have. Now, look at that. All of these priorities, right? They're listed as priorities, and it's a long list, but that's the reality of economic development today. You can't pick one. They're all priorities because they all matter, because it is now economic development, workforce development, community development, all in one thing. And so important that all of you in these volunteer seats understand that, important that your staff understands that. Shannon obviously has already talked about that. You've got to be addressing all of that wide range of things to be successful, because just the power, just the land, just the people, they're all challenges, right? I mean, can you imagine, Dee, thinking about childcare from your seat in 1980, right? It never would have even been on the radar, and yet today, childcare in Nebraska is a hardcore economic development issue. It is. Housing, all of those things have become economic development. And it's been very interesting for me to see that, but then also now just in these 3 months to see how some of the considerations have changed to things that I certainly would never have imagined. I was in a visit with a prospect who's thinking about coming, well, they're going to go somewhere in the Midwest. Nebraska is one of the possibilities. Number one issue that they're trying to figure out that will make that decision is the carbon score of the local corn. Well, who would have ever thought we got to be figuring out what the carbon score is of our corn to know if we're going to be in the game with an economic development prospect. It's just fascinating stuff. And in that environment, I'll just say this, you have to have the right people doing the job. True of the board, as I mentioned earlier, it's true of the people that you're paying to do the job. They have got to be smart and strategic and flexible and all of those things. So, and clearly you have, at this point, the right people in the job. That's important. And the other side of it that you've accomplished here in the last year is bringing Chamber and Economic Development together, because they've never been more closely linked than they are today, because of what we've talked about already in terms of the nature of this work. So that was a really smart decision for the time that we were in, and congratulations to all of you, whoever it was in the room, that had to come together to make that work. Because I know from personal experience, those are not always easy conversations. So I think those are the things that we see on the horizon. I think those are the things that we see as realities today within economic development. I think they fit so well with what I've heard in the last hour from all of you and where you're taking this organization and, more importantly, this community. So congratulations on that. And I'll leave you with this thought. I think that is so critically important, because what we know for sure is that all long-term success, all success that's going to stick, is going to be community-driven. It will never be because the state of Nebraska or the federal government comes to you with the magic program. It's never going to work that way. We've got to be here to support you. You've got to drive the bus. And what I've heard in the last hour and in past conversations with Shannon and Dave and others is that Hastings is driving that bus in the right way, which allows us then to be a really good partner at the state. So congratulations on that, all of the success you've had in the last year, and really putting yourselves on a path towards success. Looking forward to being your partner and making that happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Casey, for coming out and sharing those remarks. I think that today we helped to hone our story. We heard a little bit about telling that story, and I think we can practice on our neighbors that maybe need to hear that story more every day. And so after a day like this, where we hear all of the good news that's going on in town, in our community, we hear all of the good things that the state's doing to help, that we can leave here and hone that story on our neighbors, and then take it across the state and bring people back to Hastings, to their home where they want to come back to. And I think that's an exciting future that we have. So I want to thank you all for coming today. I want to thank Lachlan for their hospitality, their meal that they prepared for us. I want to thank Shannon, her team, for putting the event on again. They were on the job about 8 weeks when this was 6-8 weeks when they decided to put this on. So this has been a pretty quick turnaround, and so I do appreciate their efforts in putting this together in such quick order. And again, I want to thank our pivotal leaders here this morning that came and spoke about their new roles and what they're doing to make a difference in our community and our state. Thank you all.